I have seen many torn western skies, but rarely does a crack on a mirror cut this deep. The girl was judged too ugly to marry. Rider Jonah Creed stepped in, blood staining the brass edge. The youngest sold off, the gun raised then lowered. If you dare to stare into that gash, take my word, don't blink. The cracked brass mirror lay face down on the wooden table, its back smoked, one corner of brass chipped, the crack running slant like a dry blade. Eliza stood close to the table, hand smoothing over the thin layer of dust before stopping at the crack. Outside, wind dragged the door to a creak, the torn curtains snapping up and down like a fish thrashing. The coal stove snapped and hissed. Her father sat tilted before the fire, empty glass set against the cracked toe of his boot. He did not watch the fire nor his child. He watched the glass as though waiting for it to fill itself. On his brow, one white hair stuck to sweat. His shirt opened 2 buttons, chest marked by an old scar. His hand held the bottle, the neck touching lightly against the rim, knocking out a dry sound. "Too ugly to marry," he said, voice flat and cold. It did not come from the throat, but like from the empty bottle. Eliza did not lift her head. Her finger halted on the dust, leaving a small, corn-sized gap. She nudged the edge of the mirror a little, did not turn it. Wind shifted, the door swung in, hinge scraping wood with a long groan. A thin shard of sunlight slid through a crack, landing right on the brass mirror. The light lay there, cut in half by the crack. Eliza watched it as if it marked a boundary line. Smell of stale liquor, damp hide, and dead coals packed the room. He tapped the bottle against the glass again. "Mark it at noon," he added, voice muffled. "Don't let anyone see your face." His hand pointed toward the black scarf hanging by the door latch. The scarf was ash-stained, its fringe ragged. Eliza did not reach for it. She only pulled the mirror closer to the table edge, pressed it down tighter. Her nail left a scratch on its back. Out in the yard, the rooster leapt off the trough, sand flying against the step. A long shadow cut across the yard like a butcher's knife. Hooves pounded on dry ground. Spurs rattled faintly. Weeds brushed against the horse's legs. The rider stopped at the hitching post, dropped the reins into the slot of wood with clean motion. Dust rose around the faded black trouser leg, settling slow enough for each grain to be seen. Eliza moved 1 step, back still straight. She glanced through the curtain flipped by the wind. Outside stood the shadow of a tall man, heavy-shouldered, wide hat pulled down to shade his eyes. He stood like a post, only the reins trembling with the horse's breath. At his hip, the grip of a revolver showed half its steel loop, gleaming from polish. No face, only the cut of his jaw when he tilted. His shadow stretched to the water trough, dry on the table. He did not turn toward the door. "Don't look," he dropped, his chin jerked toward the face-down mirror. "Wipe it." Eliza pulled her shirt hem, ran it along the brass edge. Dust smeared into a black streak on the cloth. She pressed the chipped corner. A few old dried reddish flecks came off like soil. She held her breath, listened. Outside, a stirrup strap adjusted, leather rasping, a small exact spit into dust. Father rose, the chair gave a sharp cry. From the drawer he took a folded slip of paper, oil-stained at the edge. He shoved it beneath the back of the mirror, left one corner showing. Eliza saw a blurred bull's head seal in ink, the smell of broken oil ink. He pressed the mirror down, firm, thumb fixed on the crack, like locking a door. "Don't touch," he said. "Women only know how to break things." He stepped onto the porch, shook out his coat, boot striking hard once against the step as though testing its hold. Wind pushed in, forming a cold hallway between them. Eliza stood still, eyes on the slip poking from the mirror's back. The bullhead seal stamped across smeared handwriting, only one word clear enough: "Do." Her throat dried. She pulled her hand back, did not draw it out. Fingernail brushed the crack, fingertip burning as if on a taut wire. Boots thudded on the step. A shadow cut the sunlight across the table in one beat, Smell of horsehide, wind, and clean sweat rushed through the gap. The rider stopped at the threshold, did not knock. Father said, "Come in." He spoke with the voice of a man used to giving orders with a gun behind his back. The rider stepped in. The door brushed his spine, slicing off the draft. He touched the brim of his hat, lowered it to hand, set it by the stove. Black hair clung with sweat at his neck, strands cut sharp. His eyes swept the room once: coal stove, empty glass, wooden table, face-down mirror. His gaze stopped where the slip showed. A slight blink, gone quick. He said nothing. "Jonah Creed," her father introduced, voice already pouring liquor again. "Rancher from the south." His chin jerked toward his daughter like flicking off spare salt. "Eliza." Eliza bowed her head, eyes still in the mirror. She heard the tendon in his hand slide on the bottleneck. The sound of fresh liquor poured. Those things ran like a work schedule. "Sit," Jonah said one word, but to the chair. He sat himself across from the stove, hat set on his thigh. His right hand opened, palm up on the table, one span from the mirror. Fine scratches lined his wrist, old marks. On his middle knuckle, a thickened patch from the gun. Her father did not sit. He stood at an angle, blocking the visitor's view of the drawer. He poured more, shoved the bottle close to Jonah as a test. Outside, the spurs went still. The horse stopped pawing. "Eliza," her father said, eyes not on her but fixed on Jonah. "Bring water." Eliza lifted the pitcher with her left hand, slid it from the table's edge. Her right wrist brushed the mirror's back. She steadied it from slipping, but its weight felt changed, heavier, as if someone had slipped another thin thing beneath. The slip rasped against wood, sound too soft, yet still heard. Jonah watched the motion. His face did not change. He looked at the pitcher, then the empty glass. When water poured, its splash on the glass sounded like shards being scratched. He lifted the glass, drank a mouthful without touching lips to rim, set it back in its place. The base met wood, leaving a damp ring cutting across the mirror's back edge. "Work?" her father asked, eyes fixed on the bottle's throat. Jonah tilted his head a little, as if to avoid a falling hair. "Cattle," he said, "no more." His right hand stayed on the table. His fingertip traced the damp ring, dragging it into a short line of water. That line passed right across the mirror's crack. It split in two instantly. Eliza saw it. She straightened her back. No one spoke further. In the gap between the three, only the creak of wood swelling and the dying coal. Father turned half his body toward the window, shifted his stance. He pressed two fingers against the table's edge, nails tapping 3 short beats. Each beat spaced evenly like counting debt. He did that when someone knocked to demand money. Eliza knew that rhythm. She set the pitcher back in place. Beside it, the black scarf hanging on the door latch stirred and dropped to the floor, one end stained with ash. Jonah bent, picked the scarf up. He brushed the ash off with 2 light pats, hung it back in the same place. As he fixed it on the latch, his hand passed across the face-down mirror. He paused half a second. His eyes shifted from the scarf to the crack. Just one blink, then away. He did not ask. "Show your face," Father said, this time directly to Eliza. His hand fumbled at the latch for the scarf. His fingers touched the empty spot because the scarf was already back. He pulled it down, swept it across the table, dust rising in a pale cloud. "Cover," he ordered, shoving the scarf into her hand. The cloth was still warm with ash. Eliza did not cover. She left the scarf resting on the mirror's back. Checking a strange horse, straight nose, hair tied tight, a faint bruise on her cheekbone lined with a crack in the mirror when turned. He did not ask. Outside, a hay cart rolled by, wheels grinding gravel in a long scrape. The neighbor's dog barked twice, stopped. From the barn, the tie rope shook, the post clicked a dry knock. The sun lifted a little. On the floor, dust rose in a thin yellow sheet, then fell like ash. A black fly landed on the mirror's back. It rubbed its forelegs, turned once, then flew off. "Noon, market," Father repeated, voice same as before. "Take the back way, not the main road." He looked at Jonah. "He knows the law here." Jonah did not answer at once. He lifted his hat, turned the inside up, blew away a speck of dust. He set it on, buckled the strap, rose. The chair slid back an inch. His hand pressed the chair's shoulder, pushed it back to place without a mark. Then he looked straight at Father. "Understood," he said. Eyes did not move. The two stood like stone. Eliza heard her own chest beat, but that rhythm could not break the tick of the clock. She bent, lifted the scarf from the mirror's back. Fine dust stuck to her hand. She tilted the mirror up a crack, enough to catch half her eye split by the crack. Morning light slid in the slit, splitting her pupil like a black bean cracked. She dropped the mirror back, shut it flat, let the weight of brass swallow it. The slip wedged beneath. The bullhead seal darkened with sweat from her touch. Father turned. He saw it. He stepped long, hand wrinkled, reaching to hold the mirror's back. Jonah's hand stopped before he touched. Two firm fingers on the edge, steadying it. The two froze. The stove popped a kernel-like crack. Wind shifted at the porch, carried dust through the room in a fine line, cutting across their legs. Neither pulled away first. Father stared at Jonah's hand. Jonah stared at the mirror's edge. Eliza stared at the crack. Three gazes locked in one tight instant. Then Father drew back first. He grabbed the bottle, stepped toward the fire. Jonah lifted his hand off the mirror, straightened his hat, turned, walked out. Wind rushed in at his heels. On the step, his boot nail rang one sound apart from all others, the sound of new steel not worn. Eliza followed 2 steps, stopped at the threshold. From there, she saw Jonah's shoulder blades as he mounted. The horse shifted weight, hide shining beneath dust. Jonah placed his foot in the stirrup like hammering a nail. Straight, exact, no waste. He sat, saddle steady. He drew the reins back half an inch, looked through the torn curtain. His gaze did not meet her, but touched the place where sunlight had struck the mirror's edge. He tipped his hat 1 degree. At the edge, the words, "must pay," sunk beneath the bottle's shadow. Father sat again as before, heavier. He raised the bottle, drained the rest. His mouth hit the neck, sound dry as knuckles tapping hollow bone. Eliza stood straight, slow hand pressing the mirror 1 inch deeper. The slip wedged tight. She drew her hand back, stared long. No word. The room pulled all sound into itself, leaving only the stove's low growl and the clock's patient beat. At the door, a strip of dust hung, not yet fallen. In it, the shadow of the wide hat lingered 1 beat, then thinned. Eliza's eyes followed, then returned to the mirror. She set her palm on the brass back, felt the chill sink to bone. Her other hand lifted the scarf from the slip, folded it twice, then 4 times, set it square on the table's edge as though nothing. The door creaked again. Wind hissed through like a drawn wire. The beam of sunlight still lay there, split by the crack, never joined. Eliza kept still. She did not chase the dust nor lift the seal. She only stood, hearing her father shift the chair, hearing the fire chew wood, and hearing silence stretch into a second room, unseen, between the objects that stayed where they were. In that silence, the mirror spoke enough. Jonah Creed spoke his name like driving a nail into wood. Voice low, clean, unbroken. He stood at the threshold, wide hat in hand, wrist still resting on the gun grip, shining like freshly oiled. Father nodded, no smile, lips rolling one short, like a grain of sand. Eliza held the water tray steady, eyes not past the table's edge, where the brass mirror lay face down, crack running slant like a dry cut. Wind tore through the porch, rattled the door faint. Fine dust lifted at the horse's legs outside. Jonah stepped once inside, boot heel thudding solid on the floor. His eyes swept quick. Blowing stove, leaning bottle, black scarf on the latch, face down mirror. He paused one beat at the slip trapped under the mirror's back. Bullhead seal sliced by dust. Then his gaze moved on, clean as though nothing seen. "Eliza," Father said, chin tilting toward the tray of water. "Pour." Eliza tipped the pitcher, the clear stream hitting the tin cup, clattering at the bottom. One hand kept the neck steady, the other brushed the mirror's back when she set the cup down. The mirror did not slide. The slip scraped wood, a small rustle loud enough. Jonah did not take liquor. He said. The three stood in a silent triangle, pressed by the coal stove crackling. The wall clock jumped a notch. Outside, the horse blew hard, the reins jingling. Supper came before daylight was gone. Father set Eliza in the dark corner, the stove's glow cutting half her face. The table held chipped bowls, aluminum spoons, dry bread, beans with thin grease. Father sat at the head, wood scarred by knife marks where his hand rested. Jonah sat left, back not touching the chair, hand flat on the table as if ready to rise. Eliza laid the plate before him. He dipped his head, barely, eyes brushing then dropping. She did not meet them. Spoon struck bowl, long, ringing like a tightened string. Father scooped heavy, raised it to his mouth, a bean falling on his chin, then rolling into his collar. He did not wipe. He looked across at Jonah, scratched his nose with a nail long enough to show the dirt caught. "Land across the creek," he said. "Grass is good." He tapped a spoon 3 beats against the bowl, each like setting a figure down. Jonah raised his spoon, ate one small bite, chewed little. His eyes went through the window. Evening light drew a slant line through dust, splitting the kitchen in 2 colors. Eliza stayed still, her chopsticks tapping one stray beat against the bowl, caught by Father's glance. She stopped. The brass mirror still lay face down on the sideboard, smoke-darkened back, crack flaring broken gold at the table's edge. When she reached for salt, her sleeve brushed the rim. Dust gathered in a line parallel to the crack. Jonah's glance passed over it. He did not touch, did not ask, only set his spoon down where the mirror's light split beam cut the handle in 2. Father poured liquor, shoved it toward Jonah, his hand steady. Jonah lifted the bottle with 2 fingers, pushed it back. "Still riding." Father gave a short laugh. "Not warm." He drank instead, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, leaving a dark streak on cracked skin. "Men from the south," he said, eyes fixed on the hen strung on the wall. "Keep their thoughts inside." Jonah did not answer. His eyes gave back a nod, barely seen. Night slid in the door like a thin cat. Stove shadows thickened, halving faces. When the meal was done, Father set his spoon straight, angled on the bowl's rim, its tip pointing at Eliza. "Porch," he said. His voice sank one pitch lower. He went first. Eliza carried the tray. It rattled once when her foot caught the torn rug. Jonah waited one beat, then rose, his hand nudging the chair back exact to its place. The porch wood was cold. A firefly hung under the square, still face down. The scarf spread first, covering half the seal. She wiped its brass rim, dust streaked black on cloth. The crack cut moonlight, made the firefly blink twice on the mirror's back, like two mismatched eyes. Father pushed the cigarette to his mouth, never struck fire. His words came, dragging like a blade across hide. "If he finds you worth interest, good. If not, you're gone." No word pressed harder than the rest. No cough after. He set the cigarette on the mirror's back, its tip knocking brass with a small sound. Jonah sat, back arched off the chair. He tilted his head just enough to miss a falling strand of Eliza's hair. It landed on the table, clung to the rim of the mirror. His glance dropped, exact on the start of the crack, where the brass lifted a slit, pinching the slip. Moonlight fractured across the table through that gap, like water stomped underfoot. His hand lifted, did not touch, only followed the slipping light. "Clean it," Father said. "Let it shine." He handed Eliza another rag. She wiped along the rim, circled halfway, stopped at the crack. The cloth snagged on the edge. A thread caught between brass and wood. She tugged. It tore free. Left a fine streak drawn long like a pinch mark. Jonah drew in one quiet breath. Father heard. He glanced. No one smiled. Outside, the horse coughed, stomped once. Reins shook like a small bell. Grass wind pushed damp air onto the porch, brushed Father's pipe case at his belt. On the sill, a beetle rolled across, back slick as wet stone, knocked the mirror's foot, flipped, struggled, then stilled. Father pulled the lighter from his pocket, snapped it. Blue-yellow flame shook. He did not light the cigarette. He held it close to the slip's edge. Paper curled a little, rim darkening. He laughed, no teeth showing. "Debt breeds debt," he let out as if to the sky. Jonah's face stayed. He lifted his hand to shield the flame from wind without a word. Eliza saw his hand's shadow split by the crack across the mirror, dividing it in two. "You came for cattle," Father said, eyes in the flame. "My cattle thin," he went on, "but the land is good." He tapped the lighter on the table. 7 beats, stopped at the 8th. Jonah did not count, but his lips pressed half a beat. He set 2 fingers on the table near the mirror, drew a small circle around the moon's spill. His touch ran over the rise of a hidden nail. He already knew the table better than a first guest should. Eliza placed a cup of water before Jonah, set its rim brushing the crack so it left a damp ring. She said nothing. Jonah said nothing. His eyes lifted to her face for 1 beat. His head slightly, his eyes leaving the flame. "I need a name beside mine," he said, palm pressing flat on the mirror's back, heavy. Vein in his wrist throbbed once. "In return," he went on, "I keep anyone from touching the strip along the creek." In return, Eliza bent her finger slightly. She looked at her father's hand. His nails were cracked with black dirt, his thumb still pressed on the crack as if locking it. Jonah did not move his hand there. He lifted the cup, drank one swallow, set it down on the same damp ring. When its base touched wood, the sound cut short like a string snapped. His face did not change, but his lower eyelid rose a little, the mark of a man holding back a question. Father released the mirror, turned to Eliza, tongue flicking fast over dry lips. "He doesn't need liquor," he said. "He needs to see." He pointed toward the yard. "Show him." His head jerked. Then he stepped straight down the porch, as if dragging the talk beyond the wood's edge. He whistled for the dog, half the sound lost to wind. Eliza stayed, eyes down on the mirror. She set her fingertip on the cold brass rim, slid along the jagged chip. She stopped at the crack, pressed gently, as if to test if the break was alive. It did not move. Only the moonlight under it wavered. She tilted the mirror a little, just enough to catch her face cut in two. One half of her left eye stood in light, the other half sunk in shadow. Her breath stirred the dust on the brass like drifting powder. Jonah watched silent. He did not shift a muscle. His right hand left the gun grip, hung in air, touched nothing, then lowered to his thigh. He turned his head a fraction, then back. His gaze did not meet her eyes in the mirror, but the crack, the halved face. Half a second, no longer. Out in the dark, his horse whinnied, short, like a cough. Echo answered from the empty lot, thinning out. Silence swelled like a bubble of water on a stream before breaking. Wind stopped. The lamp inside sank low. Dust on the porch froze mid-air like caught by a thread. Eliza lowered the mirror, not flat, only let it drop one notch, striking the table sharp. Brass on wood, dry. The slip quivered. The bullhead seal tilted half a turn. Jonah leaned forward slightly, as if to catch another sound coming. None came. Only the reins touching post, wood groaning. He rose slow, dragged the chair back with his boot, lined it straight. His eyes crossed the yard, the fence, the creek, dark as a ribbon. He did not say go. He did not say stay. Eliza still stood by the table, hand on the cracked rim. They only lay there, cold, violet, waiting. The horse cried again, longer, pulling an answer from beyond the hill. Jonah turned his face toward the sound. Moon traced a thin line along his nose. He buttoned half his collar, a needless move or deliberate, as if bracing for another talk to come later. He set two fingers on the table's edge, near the crack, still leaving the space of one dust grain. Then he let go, walked down the steps without looking back. Eliza did not move. The mirror lay tilted, one edge open, catching moon inside like hiding a small blade. Father came back in, sweat and liquor on him. He saw the two places swapped. He bent, pressed the mirror flat, his thumb locking the crack again. He blew out the flame on his cigarette, slipped it into his pocket. He spoke no more. Only the wood door groaning. Only the night dragging past the fence. Only the wall clock jerking one square on the face. And the mirror, heavy, face down, as if swallowing a word. Dew, swelling with the house's breath. In that silence, Eliza's eyes lifted once more, chasing Jonah's shadow fading into the yard. The light streak on the table stayed, cut by the crack, never joined. Morning, mist rose faint from the trough. Eliza carried a bucket to the cattle shed, left hand pulling the latch, right hand shielding wind. Wood boomed. She halted at the sill. The cracked brass mirror hung upside down on a saddle hook, face turned outward like a reversed eye. Old leather strap bound it fast. On the brass rim, a dried brown streak clung rough, running 2 finger joints long. She scraped it with her nail. The stain broke into small bits, fell on her boot, a faint metallic stench mixed with warm dung. She looked up. A short hair stuck in the crack, curled in the brown mark. Beneath the mirror, ground churned by 2 fresh boot ruts, heels deep, toes split. Jonah came from the fence line, leading his horse through the posts. He stopped, eyes on the mirror, hung wrong side, his head tilted 1 degree. He looked, long enough to see the moon trace from last night, still faint on the brass back. His lids lowered slow. Then he turned away, checked the bit straps, tightened one hole, said nothing. Eliza set the bucket in the corner. The old wooden steps trembled once. She reached to unloop the strap, holding the mirror. The knot tight, pulled fresh. She lowered the mirror, half a span, stopped when the rim cut her palm. A brown flake pressed onto her skin, dry, heavy. She pulled back, wiped on her skirt, leaving a long, dark smear. Father coughed inside, short and deep. Jonah tossed the reins on the hitch, led the horse into shade, his left hand stroking its neck like calming a tired child. He glanced across, saw Eliza's hand still on the mirror's rim. She let go. The mirror slapped the shed frame hard, brass flashing a pale patch of sky. He turned his eyes aside, marked a white chalk X. The chalk scraped the wood, dust falling to stick on the brown streak of the mirror. Eliza exhaled, wiped the X with her sleeve. The chalk blurred, still there. She set the mirror back on the saddle hook, face turned outward, back pressed to wood. The crack looked at her from outside like a fish eye, cold. They went into town before noon. Road dust ate into their collars, sweat holding it gray. Outside Garner's store, a knot of women leaned by the water trough, swinging pails, eyes sliding after passers. Across the way, the notice board outside the post office held 2 new sheets pinned, corners curled by wind. Church bell struck once. Telegraph in the back room tapped like fingernails on thin tin. News? The barber called through the glass, razor still on a customer's throat. They did it. Mrs. Garner pushed the door, glanced once at Eliza, then pretended to look for soap. Bragg set the ring right in the stable, she whispered to another, loud enough to carry. No preacher, just paper, just seal. Eliza stood at the step, eyes on the pinned sheet. Consent to marriage, the line dry, ink still oily. Name slanted. Ruth, her father's surname beside it. The signature scrawled like a child learning. At the bottom, the bullhead seal in red, stamped across, biting into the blue lines of the post sheet. Beside it, a domestic ticket, dated yesterday, stage headed east. Sweat slid from Eliza's nape down her back, cold. She raised her hand, but did not touch the paper. Your father holds the creek land now, a man leaning on a post said, voice dry laugh. Silas Bragg leaves nothing loose after a seal. He spat into the gutter, met her eyes, one beat, then turned. A girl tugged her mother's hand, pulling away from Eliza's path. She left the board, crossed by the smithy. Hammer blows on iron, cracked sparks. Coal stung the air. On the bench before the saloon, the keeper polished a glass, paused as she passed. Stage came last night, he called to another, no longer watching her. 2 riders, one old, one young, ring strung with red cord. Another man nodded, fingers drumming on the table. Bragg likes red cord. Eliza's nose stung sudden. Her head tilted as if dodging a punch, not thrown. Blood slid thin from her nostril, dropped on the step, dark on dust. She drew a coarse cloth, pressed. Spine. 1, 2, 3, then stopped. He stepped off, striding to the hitch rail. He said nothing. They returned when the sun stood high. Dust heavier. Father already in the yard, ledger in left hand, lighter in right. Heat shimmer blurred his hat as if strung by thread. The ledger's page bore his dirty print, thumb stamped on "Do." He gave no greeting, only drove his chin low, gaze through them at the gate. 3 riders came in through dust. First was Silas Bragg. Black vest tight, cuffs white, clean. A braided cord at his shoulder shining, he smiled with no teeth. Behind, 2 hands, hats low. One carried a narrow wooden case, arm-length clasped metal. They stopped 3 paces off. Said nothing. Wind lifted Bragg's coat edge, showing a red cord tied to a slim ring, like thread meant to cut a throat. Father snapped his lighter shut, stepped forward once, then back. Halting beneath the mirror hung wrong side on the saddle hook. Sun struck the brass, flared into Eliza's eyes. She squinted, stepped half back. The brown streak on the rim hardened, another thin line drawn between nails. The neighbor's dog barked twice, fell quiet. "Bring the gun," Father said, eyes not on her. He jerked his head toward the house. "Yard." The order dropped from his mouth like lead weight. Eliza went in, came back with the old musket, stock blotched. She checked the barrel, closed the hammer, stood at the post's shadow. Jonah had stepped into the yard to her right, 3 paces, his back set to emptiness. He set his hat on the rail, sweat dark at his neck, his eyes fixed on her, not Father, not Bragg, watching as if counting wind's breath. Father opened the ledger, raised it to Bragg, pen pressed on the page. Bragg did not look at it. He looked at Eliza. "You keep the land," Bragg said, voice thin, clean. "The rest, notes on time." One of his men opened the case. Inside, a length of soft rope, a thin knife. Oil fumes rose. He set it on the post, flexed his fingers. Eliza lifted the gun, stock to shoulder. The barrel drew its line across air. Her eye passed Bragg, past the red string with ring, stopped at the mirror hanging wrong where sunlight struck back into her aim. The mirror split the yard. One Bragg calm, one Jonah still, one Father with ledger, all cut in 2 by the crack. Father turned, his palm open but not touching her. "Hand it," he said, not naming gun, not hand. Bragg lifted his chin half a notch. His man folded both hands before him, hiding the knife. Jonah did not move. He only tilted to shift the glare from his eyes. His eyes waited. Not slow. No one called. The muzzle touched dry dirt, dust rising in a thin ring. The fly rose, circled, vanished. Eliza slackened her grip. The gun slid, dropped to gravel, butt striking stone with a crack like a lid on hollow box. Silence opened. Father shut the ledger. He turned his back to her, stepped to Bragg. Their eyes met one beat, as if hefting a weight across a wall. Bragg nodded once, smile still shut. His man closed the case, thumb snapping the clasp. Then opened it again, drew the rope, dropped it loose on the post. Jonah stepped half forward, stopped, his fingers touching hat brim in a motion useless but clear as a mark. Eliza bent, picked up the gun. She brushed the stock, left the dirt on barrel. She stood straight, holding it at her thigh. Eyes through the mirror hung wrong, in it her face torn by the crack. Bragg doubled, Father only half his right side, the rest outside frame. Sun poured through the split like molten metal. Father spoke low to Bragg, never turning back. Bragg stepped across, laid a cold hand on Eliza's shoulder without grip. The hand passed her collarbone like drawing a chalk line. Jonah's eyes lifted, fixed on that hand. His eyelid twitched once. He did not advance. He did not retreat. His throat tightened, swallowed dry. His fingers left his own gun's grip, hooked the cord that tied his hat on the rail. The cord quivered. A tone different from a horse's rein. Eliza pressed her cloth to the dried mark at her nose. The cloth now layered with dust, brown dark. She set it once on the barrel, like wiping, but left it unclean. In the mirror, the crack swallowed the cloth's shadow, bending it into a thin flag. "Done," Father said. He tucked the ledger under his arm, stepped toward the porch. His boot pressed sand, leaving a hollow beneath the mirror. Wind shifted. The mirror trembled in its strap, metal ringing thin. Bragg drew the rope from the case, placed it on the table, pushed it toward Eliza with 2 fingers. He never touched her. "On time," he repeated, eyes flat, empty. Eliza watched the rope coil like a thin snake. She lifted the gun from her thigh, set it on the table, muzzle turned aside. Her hands hung still. Jonah's eyes stayed on her. He shifted from gun to mirror, from mirror to rope, from rope to ledger, a closed loop. He lifted his gaze to the sky as if to find an edge to slip through, then lowered it to the mirror's crack. His lips pressed tight. A thread. No one spoke. Bragg's horse paused, hung reversed, spoke with reflected light, splitting all and holding them apart. Wind did not round it. It did not need to. It was the mark. Father slammed the ledger down on the table. His chin jerked toward the gate, never at Eliza. Out! His hand swung sideways, never touching her, only breaking the air. He tore the cracked mirror from the saddle hook in one jerk, threw it to the dirt like casting a bone stripped of meat. Brass struck stone sharp, the crack catching sun in a blade's flash, then gone. Dust rose in a ring, clung like ash. The neighbor's dog barked once, tucked tail. Jonah already stood by his horse. He said nothing. The reins slid in his hand once, leather rasp. He turned half aside, as if dodging the scorch of straw smoke. His eyes passed Eliza once, paused on the mirror tilted in dust, then moved. He led his horse through the posts, boot on dry earth, thudding heavy. His shadow stretched long, crossed the porch light, vanished through the gate. No farewell, no sign. Eliza gathered her cloth bundle and the brown kerchief. She stooped, slid her hand beneath the mirror's rim. Brass bit her palm cold. The dried streak smeared onto her skin, rough. She tilted the frame up, dust falling in lines. The crack split noon into 2 wires. She rubbed it quick on her dress, the stain darker. Father stood in shade, thumb tapping pen barrel, 3 beats, then a miss. He turned into the house, slammed the door. The plank fell, hinges groaned. The field road burned, wind-scorched grass. Eliza carried the mirror under arm, brass biting rib, steady ache. She walked the fence line to the abandoned well on the rise. Stone rim greened with moss, mortar flaked, vines binding it. A bucket lay broken, handle gone, rust at the base. Near it, old ash from someone's fire, husk and corn shell. She sat against the stone, set the mirror face down on her knees. Crescent moon, thin as a blade, waited behind cloud. Far wind carried coyote howl, long, torn at end. Eliza unfolded her kerchief, folded into a pillow. She drew the mirror close, her finger once along the crack. It stopped at a raised dent from the fall. Nail snagged, raw. She let her hand fall to grass, eyes shut, wind turned. A faint rustle. A mouse slid through dry stalk, nudged the mirror's edge. The mirror slipped 1 inch. Eliza jolted, grabbed, missed. Brass rolled, scraped stone, struck dry tones. It hit the well rim, bounced, fell. A breathless pause, as if the room swallowed air. Then the mirror struck inside, clang, then a lower one, then nothing. No water. The well dry. Moon slipped free, silver pouring down, bent by the crack below into shards she could not see. She leaned over, stamped by moon, ears catching hoof sounds, far like wood knocking. Whose unknown? Morning twisted with crow cries, the well bottom still mute. Eliza rose, tugged at an old rope thrown over a stake. It frayed, crumbled to yellow powder. She walked the rim, seeking a branch long enough. None. She sat back, knees soiled. She rubbed them on grass. Yesterday's brown on her hand had turned moss green. She bent once more over the rim, called low to no one. Wind carried it. The well gave no answer. Evening shadows spread. Eliza climbed the rise back to town. She entered the boarding room above the dry goods shop. Stair creaked. Door paint peeled. Lock loose. On the table sat a chipped kettle, a broken cup. She drew a chair, sat, her fingers scraping the wood, fingertips hissed. 2 knocks at the door. It opened without her word. Jonah entered, hat in hand, hair damp, as if washed in some well. He did not say, "May I?" He set an object down with both hands, the brass mirror. Cleaned, the brown stain gone. The crack still there, sharper in the polished face. The rim glinted thin under evening. On the frame clung a short hair, this time straight, not curled. Eliza looked at the mirror first, then at the man. Jonah opened a handkerchief, spread it beside the mirror. On it lay a torn slip of paper, ink pressed hard, hurried, still wet. He slid it toward her. "Stage tonight," he said, voice low. "Bragg gone. Not to the old house, not to this inn." He laid a broken red cord on the cloth's edge. The ring's no longer on it. Eliza did not touch the cord. Her nose burned, but did not bleed. "Ruth?" She let the name fall. Jonah looked into her eyes one beat. "Not at Bragg's house," he said. "No record at the church. No name on the postboard." He pressed one finger toward the mirror's crack without touching. Gone. The small room froze. In the hall, someone dragged a rice sack. Wooden wheel creaked clear spoke by spoke. From the street below rose the tar sting of the smith. Eliza shoved her chair back, legs scraping the floor. She stood fast. "Go," she breathed. "Now." Jonah blocked the door, not rough. His arm across, the other holding the edge. "It's night," he said. Eliza slipped under his arm, like water. He caught her wrist with 2 fingers, not tight. She twisted, elbow hitting his bicep with a dry knock. He let go. She lunged for the table, snatched the mirror, pressed it to her side. Brass cut into rib. The crack like a marked path unseen. Jonah stepped once, added, "Enough for the 4 walls." "No, why?" came from Eliza. She set the mirror on the table. Her hand slid an inch. Brass tapped soft. The crack caught one last slant of sun, splintered sharp across the wood. Jonah turned half aside, as if dodging that sound. He laid the second slip on the first, 2 bullhead seals crossing into one red cross. Eliza turned, struck her shoulder to the wall. Lime dust burst in a pale cloud, falling on her hair. She pulled her shirt seam hard. Thread snapped. No cry. She gripped the table, head bent to the crack. Her shape in the mirror broke into short shards. Jonah set his hand once on her shoulder, light, then gone. "Dawn," he said. "The barn." She nodded without seeing herself nod. She flung the cloth over the mirror. It slid, failed to cover, the crack still bare. Jonah lifted the mirror, slipped it into his coat, as though hiding a map. He pinched the lamp out. The room dropped dark. Their steps on the stair, hollow, like sticks on a barrel. Morning, white dew hung on fence wire. Her father's house still, door shut. The dog lay curled, lifted its head, then lowered. Jonah tied his horse at the birch, gave slack one notch. Eliza went straight to the barn. Damp hay and stale sweat poured out. The door already ajar, as if someone had gone in. Inside, darker. A dark tarp hung crooked on the beam. Jonah touched the door, pushed. The tarp flipped. Rope hung from the beam. A pair of old black boots dangled, toes brushing a brass shard. Shattered mirror spread like fish scales below. His feet bare, his heels rough. Scraped brass, leaving fresh scars. Each sway of his body heel rasped. Sound small, even. Eliza stopped at the sill, her fingers clenched white on wood. Jonah lifted the tarp, tied it up. He did not touch the rope. He looked around the stall, eyes stopping at the three-legged chair, tipped, dust trail dragging from its leg to where he hung. He bent, picked up a large brass shard. A thin brown stain clung on it, one he had scrubbed clean the day before. A crack ran through, sharp, new. He raised his head, looked at Eliza, said nothing. He set the shard straight on the ground, at her foot. Eliza stepped in. Shards crackled beneath her worn sole. Her shape jerked broken in each piece with the draft. She touched the post, splinter, piercing skin. She left it. She edged near the rope, stopped, gasped. A woman covered her mouth, half a cry lost. Sweat, smell, and cow milk mixed. The barn door pushed wide. Light poured like water. Dust rose, hung, dropped. Wind curled ash through, circled Eliza's leg, swept out. Jonah stepped forward, half a pace, did not touch. He looked at rope, at feet, at mirror, then into Eliza's eyes. His eyes held. Outside, words overlapped, broken, clinging. Cut him down. Take a picture. Don't touch. Preacher. Eliza did not move. She stood at the barn door. Wind pressed ash against her dress, silver specks on dark cloth. Her father's body swung one more beat, then stilled. In that silence, the broken mirror spoke for all. It lay at his feet, crack split like a grin without joy. Ash skated, clung to brass, fell. No one said why. No one said no. Only wind crossed the ropes, cutting small whistles thin as thread, enough to know. One half was done, the other not. The carpenter's hearse rolled the street, wooden wheels grinding gravel, iron rims scraping long. The church bell struck once, stopped. The town looked at Eliza like an open wound, hats pulled low, hands tugging curtains, eyes half pity, half suspicion. An old woman at the sewing shop set her needle down, peered over glasses. The newsgirl pressed to her mother, did not call. Jonah walked beside Eliza, holding space so sleeves did not brush. His boots steady, hat cut half his face. Reins looped his left wrist, slack, hanging. At the post office, fresh papers nailed, heads of tacks flattened, a Red Bull seal stamped across release of mortgage river strip, ink still wet, smudged at the edge like a finger drag. The barber leaned out glass, razor foamed. "Debt's clear," he said flat to the air. A cattle hand raised a finger, tipped hat to Jonah. Eyes fixed one beat on Eliza before pulling away. At Garner's store, the mistress wiped the rim of the sugar jar, cloth sweeping granules to Eliza's boots. She did not bend to gather. They passed the saloon, door open, corn liquor mixed with sweat. The barkeep propped a glass on cloth, tapped twice hollow. "Packed last night," he told the table hand, but his eyes pinned Eliza's buttonhole, lifted in wind. He tipped his hat as he passed, eyes straight. A woman in black mourning cloth stood by the fence, hands holding crushed chrysanthemums, eyes fixed on the red thread, unmoving. The inn stair groaned each rung. Dust lifted, caught in frayed rug. Hall stank of cheap soap, mildew. Eliza's door opened on a push. Wood latch slipped, short sound. On the sill, the cracked brass mirror sat square, back to wood, face on the street. Afternoon light struck the crack, drew it long as a cut, bright as a blade. No one explained. A window forced? No nail trace. The sill cleaner than its edges. Eliza halted at the frame. Fingers hung. Jonah stepped 2 beats inside, stopped, keeping space. His eyes swept the mirror, the sill, the dark patch where hands leaned. A red thread fine as hair snagged brass, no longer than a fingertip. He looked 1 beat, did not touch. On the sill, a fresh scratch, thin and straight, ran close to the rim. In the corner, a copper coin lay face down, worn bull head, a brown streak where a nail scraped it. "Placed when?" The innkeeper leaned in, keys clanging. His eyes hit Jonah, slid to the mirror, stopped at the thread. He cleared his throat, clasped the keys in both hands. "No one upstairs since morning," he said. His eyes turned away first, retreating as though from cold draught. A maid passed with water, glanced once at the thread, shrank neck, asked nothing. Eliza stepped forward. Her fingertip touched brass. The mirror cast the street inside. Wide brims, porch steps, Smith's rope fence. A dog sprawled. All split by the crack. Faces cut, noses split, mouths slashed, eyes halved. The red thread twitched in wind, scraping brass with a paper sound. Jonah laid his handkerchief beside the mirror. He did not say, "Don't touch." He hooked the window latch, eased it. Hinges squealed. Wind pressed the glass, a thin hum. Light jumped 1 notch on the mirror. Eliza seized the thread, pulled. It held 1 beat, then slipped from brass, left a faint red trace. She wound it round her finger, tight. Color darkened half a shade. On the street, a hay cart turned alley. Driver whistled. Smith hammer sparked. Shards burst. At the post, the clerk stamped fresh sheets, each clack even. These sounds entered through the mirror's edge. Stare outside, hands locked, hat beside. A drunk brushed him, shook head, walked on. Jonah did not rise. He looked through the crack of door, saw the streak of light down the table like a tongue. He did not call. He only pulled the hat near, set it upside down, brim to floor, sweatband showing. Below, men set chairs outside the saloon, dealt cards. A card flipped, struck a passer, flew, caught on a line, hung. Children kicked a tin, rolling clatter, tin hit stone, rim broke. A horse bit the trough edge, teeth tapping rock, hollow knocks. Small sounds linked like corn kernels, counted. Night rose quick, black, solid. Wind cut thin and cold through the street, pressed against skin like water. Eliza let the mirror stand another beat, her reflection split. Right eye in a strip of light, left eye drowned. A red thread wrapped her finger, leaving a white, pale groove across the flesh. She lifted her hand, pulled the thread off, dropped it on the table. It coiled into a small loop, lay still beside the coin. The lodger next door coughed, struck a match. The glow leaked through the crack. In Eliza's room, her breath smeared the mirror face, the blur sliding along the fracture line. She wiped it with her palm, dry. The surface cleared again, the cut sharp, not softened. She drew a chair, sat, back straight, hand on table edge, finger tapped twice, uneven. Ceiling scratched, dotted with small dark marks. Outside, boots of the night patrol passed, rhythm even, stopped 1 second before the boarding house door, then moved on. A cat leapt across the roof, tiles rattled low. Eliza rose. She lifted the mirror with both hands, felt the chill of brass travel to her wrist. She set it back on the sill. Same place as before. Fracture at the base, aligned with the old mark. The crack caught moonlight, stretched into a blade line from wood edge to glass edge. No one explained why it returned here. No one asked who carried it up. The eyes along the street had shut behind curtains. Words spoken in daylight had fallen flat. No echo. She reached, flipped the mirror down. The black back of brass swallowed the light. Its touch on wood sounded thin, like a strand of rain. She drew the curtain, left a slit the width of 2 fingers. Wind slid through, pulled a long hiss, brushed the sill, raised dust in threads. Dust settled on the mirror's back, grain by grain. Mirror one last time, the surface cold. The fracture beneath unseen now, yet its feel still lay under her fingertips, rough, sharp, old. She drew her hand back, laid it flat on the table. The red thread rested beside the coin, unmoving. Street lamps died one by one, stripping another layer of sound. The door quivered in its frame. No words remained. The wind kept hissing through the slit, thin, stretched, like a scar that stayed without closing. The cracked brass mirror lay face down, the break still there, only hidden by dust. The red thread beside the coin, silent as a signature not yet dry. A father traded land for blood. A girl lowered the barrel to keep someone, or to lose all. A rider walked beside, but held distance. Whom did silence save? Whom did it kill? Who set the mirror back on the sill, right on mark? Was the bull's head sealed debt or sin? And is lowering the barrel forgiveness or another form of betrayal, betrayal of the self? The street is dark, yet the cut still runs the mirror's length. What do you make of the last choice, in a land where dirt weighs more than honor and silence is used as a weapon?